So, Nick, before we get to the big UFC 300 event, we do have one more pay-per-view. Yep. And if I'm being honest, it rivals 300, and the main event is certainly one that everybody's anticipating. Right. Sugar Sean O'Malley versus Chito Vera. Great stylistic matchup. It's a rematch. Now, I want to talk specifically today about some keys to victory for Sugar Sean. And we'll do the same for Chito Vera as the fight gets a little bit closer. But I want to talk about today what Sean can do to kind of right the ship and get back the one loss on his record against Chito Vera. Yep. And the way I kind of see it is that he's got to have a lot of activity. One, he's got to have a lot of activity because Chito Vera does not throw a lot of shots, but he's very powerful, and when he lands with real intention. Just go back and watch Vera versus Rob Font. He threw like half the shots that Rob Font threw and still won the decision because of the power that he landed.
Quality over quantity.
Exactly. He also finished Sean O'Malley with some brutal leg kicks. We know the perennial nerve was involved. Sean said his leg deadened, and there's nothing he could do about that. So the other thing I think Sean needs to do in that vein is be very careful of the low kick. Have your checking on point. Make sure that he checks the kicks, and not only checks them, but throws something back hard at Chito to make him pay for throwing those kicks to avoid having a similar situation again. How do you see Sean's path to victory here?
Well, I really love the matchup, and I think this is going to bring a certain aspect of Sean out that we haven't seen before, and that's the dialed in, pinpoint, focus on Chito Vera. Ever since he lost that fight, he felt like he was getting the better of the exchanges until, of course, he got injured and then lost the fight. And I think this one, even though he's a great character on the camera, off the camera, he's just a guy that the fans love, they're gravitating towards, and he's becoming a major star for good reason. This one's been keeping him up at night. You know it is. And I know he always talks about like his Oura ring or whoop strap or whatever it is that he wears to track sleep, and he gets great numbers, sometimes 4 hours of sleep. But you know every now and again that Chito Vera fight is haunting him, and this fight he's wanted to get back for a long time now. I love that it's happening for the main event and for the title, honestly. It's such an important fight for Sean to get his hand raised in this one, and I think that we're going to see a different Sean than we've ever seen before. We all know the X's and O's of this fight. It's going to be quality shots out of Chito Vera all night long. He's a slow starter, but God, when you get him in those championship rounds, he's a tough guy to deal with. And if you don't hurt him enough early on and make him start fighting from behind and getting a little bit more desperate with his attacks, then you're going to have a really difficult time finding ways to win the championship rounds. Other side of the coin is that Sugar Sean O'Malley is an amazing starter. I don't know if there's been a bantamweight that starts as good as Sugar Sean. Like the first round with him is always going to go his way because he's so fast, he's so accurate with his striking, and his feints, his mid-combination feints, his setups, everything that he does to create angles, to switch stances is really masterful, and he's really good at utilizing every square inch of that octagon, and far more difficult to take down and control up against the cage or on the ground than anybody likes to give him credit for. The dude knows range almost better than anybody on the roster, and I think if Sean's able to go out there and do what he does best, which is tons of shots, tons of creativity, throw all sorts of different weapons from different angles and approaches, he's going to have Chito Vera fighting from behind after the first couple rounds. And Sean's really, really lethal with his striking. I think he's one of the more underrated, powerful strikers at bantamweight. But he does need some volume. He needs some accumulation before he can get these guys out. Unless you're a guy like Chris Moutinho that seems to have a granite chin and he's just really hard to get out of there. Chito Vera is a very durable fighter, but I think if he goes out there with the same approach of like, let me trade two to give two, he's going to find himself far behind on the scorecards, and he's going to have to get really desperate in what are usually his best rounds, which are the later ones, rounds 4 and round 5. I think Sugar Sean really has to focus on controlling the outside because Chito Vera is a bit of a pressure fighter, and he's going to have to beat those legs up because Chito likes to utilize his kicks. He likes to utilize his legs to bring himself in, and then if he's able to find some good hands striking, some good boxing, he's going to put it on you, and usually that does a lot of damage.
Yeah, and Sean, as you said, he's one of the more underrated power strikers. And I would say more so than power, it's his timing and his precision. There was a guy not so long ago that said precision beats power and timing beats speed. And I feel like that's the perfect way to surmise Sean O'Malley. I mean, if you can take a look at Sean and the optics will tell you that the guy's not going in there and benching 315 like Josh Emmett is. Yeah. Exactly. That's just not his style. But he's very precise. He knows range, intimately well. And and he keeps people right on the edge of his long jab. And he's a tall guy for bantamweight, and he uses that to set up the power shots. And when he lands them flush, he hits them at perfect range and right at the most lethal and powerful moment of the shot, almost akin to snapping a whip rather than to swinging a baseball bat at you. If you hit him right on the crack of the whip, that's the type of power that Sean displays. He did that in the Contender Series on his way up. He's done that now against Aljamain Sterling, which not many people gave him a chance in that fight. So the character that is Suga, with the colorful hair and all of the style and brashness that comes around him, kind of gets one rap, and some people that's not their bag, and I get it. But the fighter who is Sean O'Malley has to be given credit for his being one of the best strikers in the division that he is.
Oh, yeah. I caught a lot of flack in the comment sections for saying, in my opinion, he's the best striker on the UFC's roster right now. But, I mean, honestly, skill for skill, if you talk about what he's doing in the cage and how he's innovating striking and getting basically a roadmap for people to follow and understand, with unique striking, it's not like he came from a karate background like a Wonderboy Thompson. It's not like he came with traditional boxing. He kind of was one of those new age MMA guys that's good everywhere. He had the inspiration from a lot of different guys, from Conor McGregor's to the Wonderboy Thompsons and John Jones and stuff. And he was able to formulate a game plan and a style that's very unique to himself. It's very good. It's very confusing for people to get a hold of because all of the attacks he throws come from so many different weird angles. He's able to throw them with, like you said, pinpoint precision, and he's wildly fast with it. So I think all of that is a great recipe for why he's so good everywhere, and he's not tied down by one set discipline that he was doing from his childhood age, like somebody who maybe grew up doing taekwondo all their life, and that's sort of how they're stuck. He's able to go in there and what looks like a karate stance, but then throw some heavy hands like he's a boxer, and then evade like he's somebody who's utilizing every bit of a cage like an MMA fighter does.
Yeah, and he does that very well. And getting back to the specifics of what he needs to do to beat Chito Vera is extremely hard to finish. Oh, yeah. The likelihood of Chito Vera being there in rounds 4 and 5, I think, is pretty high. Yeah. I think, in fact, the probability of this fight going to decision is pretty high. Yeah. And so I think that Sean needs to bank rounds 1, 2, and 3.
He has to.
We haven't seen Sean prove to us that he's got championship level gas.
Right.
He's got very good precision early on. The reason he knocked out Aljo is because Aljo got a little bit craven on his way in. He overextended himself a little bit, and Sean was able to read the tell and put him out. That won't happen with Chito. Chito's going to stand upright. Chito's bread and butter, man. His hands are going to be up. He's going to be in front of you. He's going to be throwing power 1s and 2s down the pipe. He's going to be throwing heavy leg kicks. So Sean needs to evade, bank the first few rounds, start to slow Chito Vera down. If he is to get a finish, it's going to be late, but I'm thinking that this fight's probably going to go to decision, and I haven't made up my mind for as far as final predictions go yet, but I think if the first 3 rounds are split, or if Chito Vera is able to get one of the first 3 rounds, or God forbid for Sean, able to get 2 of the first 3 rounds, it could start to look really bleak for Sean in rounds 4 and 5, because Chito Vera is going to be right there, biting down on his mouthpiece, standing in front of you. And one thing we've seen from the judges recently is that if you're doing a lot of evading and a lot of moving around, and you're not pushing the pace and you're not coming forward, and we know that Chito Vera is, they can start to score things in favor of the person pushing the pace rather than the one that's evading. So if you're going to have that style that Sean does so beautifully, you need to at least match, if not probably double, the strikes that your opponent is throwing and landing, because Chito Vera is going to be there pushing the pace the whole time.
Right, and Chito's shown us multiple times now that he has tons of gas, especially in those later rounds, and he really seems like a storm that's only getting stronger and stronger as the fight continues. Sean, obviously, that's still up for debate. We haven't seen him tested in 5-round fights like we need to, and he doesn't have the reps in those championship rounds. But I think ultimately he would like if this fight went all 5 rounds and he peacefully pieces up Chito Vera, the guy who took that O away from him, and the guy he thought he could have really beat a couple of years ago, but just got robbed because of an injury. I think that Sugar Sean O'Malley is going to have a lot of questions answered in his own mind on this fight. It's a very exciting matchup. I don't think it's going to look similar to the last one. I think we're going to see an aggressive Chito Vera come out there and really try to make a statement against his biggest foe in the UFC career to date. And I think Sean O'Malley is also going to be looking – he'll be looking for his finish, because he always does, with that aggressive, explosive style that he's known to throw strikes with. But I wouldn't be surprised if after about round 3 or 4, when he has that juggernaut style Chito Vera coming at him, if he goes, all right, I need to be smart, pick my moments to move forward, pick my moments to attack, and then pick my moments to evade, and let's cruise to a 5-round victory, get some extra ring experience. Yeah, beat this guy not by split decision, not by getting lucky and catching him, but actually just putting on a clinic, trying to beat him in every aspect of the game. And I think that's what we're going to see. And obviously, I've got my prediction. I'm not going to go ahead and spoil that. We'll make another video for that later. But I think this fight's very intriguing. I think the odds makers have it right. I think Sean probably would have won that fight if he didn't get injured originally. And I think this one, he's only made great improvements in his fighting style ever since then. And while Chito also is a much improved fighter, I just don't think that we've seen somebody take the leaps and the bounds as far as all realms of MMA are concerned like Sean has at bantamweight.
All we got to do now is just break down how Chito can win.
That's right.